G'day everybody, how are you going today? It is so good to see you. I am coming to you from the City Gallery, and if you're in town, we would absolutely love to see you. Or perhaps you're traveling from somewhere else, and that is a marvelous segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is, in 2022, I'm going overseas, I'm going to another city, and I want to take photographs. What should I shoot with? And I'm going to talk about everything from an iPhone all the way through to the high end. So let's talk pros and cons as to which camera you should take on holidays. So let's start with the iPhone, the humble iPhone. But let's face it, it really isn't that humble, is it? This particular phone here, which is the iPhone 12 Max Pro or Pro Max, it's $2,500 give or take, depending on which size storage, internal storage, you go with. So let's talk the pros of taking a phone. Well, clearly they are very, very small. And in the case of these phones, yes, they have the 3-camera system. You have an ultra wide, a mid, and a fairly short tele lens. And look, it's a pretty good system. I don't mind it, and I do use it with my family and so on. But in regards to capturing memories, when I've gone overseas and I've maybe spent $10,000 or $20,000 to travel around the world, I'm not sure. And the reason is, there's a couple of reasons. The first one is, it is only 12 megapixels, and it's not exactly D3 level 12 megapixels. And what I mean is, it's not a 35mm sensor, it's an absolutely tiny sensor that's in there. And the sensors are slightly different sizes depending on which of these 3 lenses you are using. And that ultimately means that this 12 megapixels is not the same as a 35mm 12 megapixels. It's not. They're not made the same. And probably one of the most obvious places that you can see where these smaller sensors fall apart is when the light starts to fade. Either as you head towards sunset and certainly into nighttime, and even indoors. These cameras simply don't have what it takes to work in low light situations. And then, there's other things to think about. Are you able to get you can't attach a long lens to this. Well, you can. There are add-ons. I've never really seen one that I was particularly excited about. So there are limitations. Obviously there's ergonomic limitations, there's battery limitations, and there's storage limitations, all of which of course can be mitigated in the same way we mitigate them with a normal everyday camera. So this would be choice number 1. Just take a high-end phone. I probably wouldn't suggest an entry-level phone if you're wanting to have photographs that you're going to keep and love and stick in an album and maybe show on a slideshow. If you are spending thousands of dollars to travel overseas, at least go for a high-ish end camera, cell phone camera. Okay, let's move on to the next possible option, the action cam. Now, of course, GoPro are very famous for action cams. I have one of those as well. This is an Insta 360. What I love about this particular type of action cam is it's modular. You can pull it apart, you can add a 360 camera. And this particular action cam with this particular mod has a 1-inch sensor in there, which theoretically, it's better in low light. It is bigger than the phone. It's got a larger sensor than the phone. So what are the pros of a camera like this? Well, again, it's very small and it's very light. You can just slip it into your pocket and you are up and running. Battery life is not the best on these. The battery life on this is way, way better. And the battery life on this one, you might only get a few hours out of it. And one thing that I don't like about both of these types of cameras is, well, you're using the screen. There's no eyepiece. So you're always holding things out like this and shooting like that. And in the case of these types of cameras, the screens are very, very small. Now this does take stills, and depending on which iteration, because they're iterating a lot, you might get 10, 12, 20 megapixels. Not bad. And from a video perspective, well, yes, this is very stabilized footage. A lot of these cameras are waterproof, they're shockproof, so they can handle the action. But one thing about these cameras is you invariably can't change the lenses. So you have more lens choices in your phone. So it starts to become quite a matrix of pros and cons, doesn't it? And both of these items have a degree of waterproofness. In the case of this particular one with the extended battery, it's not waterproof, but with the standard battery, it is waterproof. So this is not bad. Again, you've got to make sure you've got extra batteries and you've got to make sure you're offloading your images. It does take micro SD, which they get particularly huge now, but it's not a format that I trust. I would be offloading my images on a daily basis. Let's move on to the next possible choice. The ubiquitous pocket camera. Yes, these have been around a long time, and in the case of this one, it's just got a back screen. The resolutions are getting higher these days. You do have a bit more of a range of focal lengths, and often, like with this one, you actually have manual control by spinning this wheel here. This happens to be a wheel. There's another dial up here, and even this one on the front, you can set to be aperture. So these are kind of like a proxy, fully manual camera. They can shoot RAW files and so on, and they do fit in your pocket. Now, this is a sector of camera that has been taken over by the phone, and these used to sell in the millions, and I suspect there are not really as many options of these left anymore. And the reality is, the difference between a high-end mobile phone or cell phone versus this, the differences are not that much in 2022. But that is another option if you don't have a high-end cell phone. Okay, next we have a great camera. And as we slowly get larger in the range, yes, Nikon make them, Sony make them, Fuji make them, Canon make them. Everybody makes cameras in these smaller formats. Now, in the case of this one, it is an APS-C or DX in Nikon language. What I like about these retro-styled cameras is if you're traveling and you're in a place that's foreign to you, a camera like this may well look less threatening than a modern camera. So the vintage look has its place, but also these are quite small and quite cute. The pros are that you can pretty much do everything and anything that you want to do with a camera like this. You've now got full manual control. You can add and subtract accessories. You've got 4K video. You've got RAW. You've got over 20 megapixels. And there are so many cameras at this size and sort of price point to choose from. And if you get one like this, you've got an absolutely epic range of lenses to choose from because the Z mount is so adaptable. I suppose the cons of a camera like this are it gets bigger. It doesn't necessarily slip into your pocket, although once you shut it down, it is a pretty small unit and there's not that much to it. So this, to me, this sort of camera, if you're wanting to get good quality outcomes, absolute keepers, and if you may be wanting to make some home videos, and of course this is even good enough to be shooting YouTube. I mean, really any of these will allow you to create a YouTube channel if that's something you're interested in. And the standards of YouTube are quite high from my perspective. We want to have good production values. Once we get to this sort of level, we actually start to get the photographic experience. And part of what I wanted to talk about with all of this, and we're sort of around about the middle here, is if you're going away and you're actually interested in photography, like it's a passion, it's something that you want to do well, it's not just a snapshot, but it's actually something you want to excel at. Well, I think you kind of got to get to about this level so that you have the ergonomic control. You know, you can actually use the camera like a camera and you can kind of use it all day long. All of these other ones, you can make them do whatever you want. That's absolutely true. You can try super hard and make them work, but they are not ergonomically designed for a long day of shooting, a long day of holding it, a long day of putting it up to your eye, and so on and so forth. Well, none of these you can actually put up to your eye. So if you're a bit more serious about your photography and you want to have great results that you might enter into a competition, results that you might print huge on a wall. I think we kind of start at this point. I mean, this is my opinion, and I'm a professional photographer, so my standards are quite high, but I think somewhere in here is where you want to start. And the advantage of the ZFC here is that you can add lenses. So like I said, as you get more serious, you can add more serious lenses. And what this is a 50 to 250, but with the fact that this is cropped. This is a cropped camera, which actually means it's the equivalent of, at the long end, 375 mils. So this gives you more range than these three can possibly give you in this one package. And it's light and it's affordable. This and this is actually cheaper than an iPhone, this particular iPhone. Of course, it's not a phone and it doesn't do all the things that phones do, but it does a lot more for you from a photographic perspective. Okay, let's keep moving along. As we come towards the end of our journey, yes we do, and we have here the veritable Z7, one of my favorite cameras at the moment, and the reason being is the image quality of this camera is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And now that there's the Z7 II, these Z7s are quite affordable. And what I have mounted here, the lens I have mounted here on the front is the 24 to 200. So this is a great travel lens. So this one package will give you a huge amount of range from 24 all the way out to 200, which is very wide to very long. This is a full 35mm frame. So you can see here, it's a big sensor, so it is giving you very high quality photographs. We have full 4K and we have great ergonomics, fabulous battery life, very easy to change battery, and we have, from my perspective, once you buy them, if you haven't bought them yet, you've got a great card format in CF Express Type B. Now, other manufacturers, I should have brought today my Sony A7R III. The Sony A7R III and the Z7, they could go side by side in this particular look at what should I take on holidays. Similar megapixel count, the Sony has 42, this has 45, similar price points, and absolutely very similar results. What are the pros of this? Well, the pro is you've got that Z mount, interchangeable lenses, you can take as many lenses as you want and you can keep changing them, and you've got that 35mm sensor. So you are getting the ultimate in picture quality in this machine. And this is a massive all-rounder, high quality video, high quality stills, and depending on what lenses you put on the front, that will help you to get whatever outcome you want. And then that just becomes dependent on your use case and how much gear you are prepared to lug around with you. So all of these 5 options that we have here so far, this is the highest quality. It's probably the most flexible from a photographic perspective. And ultimately we spend more money and we carry more weight just to gently increase our quality. That's how I see it. So the higher you want to push your quality, the more weight you should be prepared to carry, more space you should be prepared to be taking up. The final potential option is the beautiful Z9. Now, personally, I'm the sort of person that will go traveling with the Z9. That will be the camera that I take. And why? Because I want to document everything that I do at the highest possible level. That's what I want to do. This device here, the Z9, is the absolute consummate all-rounder, I believe, right now. We've got 8K video in all sorts of permutations. We've got 4K video in all sorts of permutations. And then from a stills perspective, it's giving you everything under the sun. 20 frames per second RAW, 30 frames per second JPEG full frame, 120 frames per second full frame at 11 megapixels. There is nothing this camera can't do, really, within a spectrum of 99.9%. And of course, interchangeable lenses. So you can put any lens you want on the front. And when I travel, I would probably travel with a wide, the 14 to 24, the 24 to 70, the 70 to 200, and probably something like my 50mm 1.2. And then maybe for the days where I don't want to lug as much gear around, it would be a lens like this one on the front here, which is the 24 to 120, which is an absolutely sublime lens. Check out this video here about it. I'm really pumped about this lens. But what's the cons? Well, it's the heaviest, it's the biggest, and it is the most expensive. This package here in US dollars is probably around about 6.5 to 7 off the top of my head, and in Australia it's around about 10 grand. So these are your options. They all have pros and cons, and I really think it just depends on ultimately a balance between what is your goal, what is your outcome, what are you trying to achieve ultimately? Is it pictures on a wall? Is it creating books? Is it slideshows? Is it to go to YouTube? Is it to share on Facebook and Instagram, or share with your friends and your loved ones? And I think that decision guides which of all of these things you can take, from the phone to the action camera, to the compact camera, to the compact interchangeable lens camera, to the very high quality interchangeable lens camera, to the absolute consummate top of the range camera. And of course, budget. So it does come back to what I've talked about a lot, which is use case. It's use case, budget, and legacy. You might have some of these things already in your cupboard, and you know what they say, the very best camera that you can use is the one that you have in your hand. And that is absolutely true. So yeah, think about your end goals. Think about what you're trying to achieve. What are you actually trying to create when you get home? That to me is number one. The next is, what can you afford? If you can afford what you've decided your use case is, like I want this one, and you can afford it, great. And then I think the final choice is, how much weight do you want to carry around each day? And from my perspective, I will carry as much weight as my use case requires. Other people might want to carry as little as possible. So have a think about that. That's the checklist. And one last curveball before we go. The drone, there it is. These things come in so many shapes and sizes, and of course DJI are the absolute king of drones. This is a cute little drone. I bought this about 5 years ago. It's called the Spark. It sits under a weight class that allows you to fly it in more places than others. They keep getting smaller and lighter, not necessarily cheaper. The latest ones, I think the Mavic 3 actually became more expensive from DJI, but it is one hell of a drone. Well, there's actually two versions of it. If you want to carry the extra weight, if you want to check out the local laws, and if you're comfortable flying places you've never flown before, because it's easy to lose them and crash them and then they're gone. So if you're happy with all of those things, then yeah, take a drone with you. They are a lot of fun. Do keep in mind, they do annoy some people. Yes, they do. All right, everybody. Well, there's just a little bit of an overview of the potentiality of what you could take away on holidays. Really, there are a lot more permutations, but that is the basics. I'd love you to let me know what your holiday travel kit is. Please share that with all of us in the comments below, because we can all learn from each other, and that is the best way. Well, it has been so good to see you. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again, so please do subscribe. Please share and like. Come and visit us here in our city gallery. We'd love you to come and visit us here. Jump on the website, mattirwin.com, and please, yes, share your holiday travel camera tips in the comments below. Maybe we'll do a live stream about it as well. Let me know. Okay, I'm going to grab the camera and show you the gallery.